welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we might be making the cutest crossbody, just the best crossbody you've ever seen. Today, we're making the Catalina crossbody sling from Rosa patterns. Now this bag, guys, it's simple, it's chic, it's so fun to make, it's the best shape ever. I am just loving this. Let me see if I can get this kind of straight for you. There we go. There we go. So as you can see, I had some fun with the vinyl. This is all vinyl and it's all different colors. I was in a color blocking mode. I am feeling the 90s right now. I just love this. I love the colors. And some of you guys are going to be a little surprised because I don't use a whole lot of solids on this channel. Normally I do a lot of fun prints, but this is all solids. Look how sweet this turned out. Okay, I do want to mention that the pattern does suggest a quilted front panel. They give you 3 beautiful options to do that. I was just so excited about the clean lines of this shape that I just went ahead and left it unquilted. But you should give the quilting a try. So let's go through this. First, we have this beautiful front panel, and then we have these lovely gussets with this really fun detailing that goes all the way around the bottom for the D-rings on the side. On the top, we have zipper panels with a double zip, so we open that up. There we go. On the back, we have a really lovely little slip pocket. Inside, we have so many pockets. We have cards pockets with a slip pocket. And then on the other side, we have a zip pocket with a slip pocket. And I gotta be honest, these are probably my favorite pockets for a lining in any bag. I know that's kind of a strange thing to say because a lot of times we're like, lining pockets, you know, and it's not that big of a deal. But when it comes to usefulness, these are the most useful pockets. I just love this zipper slip combo pocket here. I don't know, I really appreciate those pockets. So as you can see, I did make this a crossbody version. In the pattern, it does have instructions to add a couple more little rings right here, so you can make it a sling as well. I'm just opting for clean lines, very simple, and that's what we're going to do in the pattern today as well. We are not going to be doing the quilting, and we are not going to be doing the sling. I do encourage you to give it a try. If you're really interested in having like a quilted front panel, but you don't trust your quilting skills, you can actually find a lot of beautiful quilted vinyl out there now. So I'll have some links down below for where you can find that. But that's an option if you want the quilted look, but you don't want to actually, do the quilting. All right, let me show you what this looks like on. Okay, I'm 5 feet, 4 inches, size small normally. I like to wear my bags as crossbodies, just like that. I mean, look at how cute that is. That's a cute shape, right? And so I think with the sling, if you had it like a sling, I'm not sure, you would wear it, I don't know. I need to make another one with the sling version because now I'm very intrigued. I love this shape so much. I love this bag so much. So thank you so much to Rosa patterns for allowing me to use your patterns in my tutorials. I love these patterns so much. They are some of the most popular patterns on the internet. I'm telling you, go to the site, look at them all. They're the most, I don't even know how to put it. They are such chic, classic shapes, but with a twist that make them completely unique. I love it, and I love this. Oh, I love this bag so much. This is a bag, I would say, it's more of like an advanced beginner bag just because of these corners, but really, I think today we're going to use some quilt cotton and vinyl. You do want to use vinyl. I would really suggest you use a vinyl or a cork or something, at least for the gussets and the zipper panels, so you have that nice structure going around the bag. But for the front and the back, I think we can get away with quilt cotton, so we're going to give that a try. And I'm going to use waterproof canvas again for the lining. Also note, this is a bounded bag, and binding, I really want you guys to try it. I think it's a lot easier than birthing the bag. I think the binding is easier. And what that binding does too is that really no matter what kind of material you're using, the binding creates like a bone around the bag, which gives it this hard shape. It's not smushing. Oh, I love this bag so much. So if you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, anything at all, leave them down in the comment section. We will have timestamps. This bag does take a bit of time to put together because we got a lot of pockets. I encourage you to do all the pockets. I do. I know a lot of times I say, well, we can skip these, skip those. I say do them all. This bag, you're going to love the bag exactly as it's written in the pattern. Timestamps for this will be listed down at the bottom of the screen. Also, if you click this little arrow over here, it will expand the description. Timestamps will also be listed in there. Also, links for material, hardware, tools, all those things will be listed down in the description of this video. This vinyl is amazing. You're going to want to grab some before they sell out, because not only is it just the most beautiful color, the most vibrant colors, it's a matte finish. It's not glossy, it's very matte, and it all glows in the dark. I'm just saying, go get yourself some of this vinyl. All right, guys, let's get started. So for this bag, you're gonna need about a ½ yard of exterior fabric. Now, just like I did on that first bag, I'm gonna be mixing it up a whole bunch. So I've got 3 different colors of vinyl, and I'm also gonna be using quilt cotton. Now, the pattern does not suggest you use quilt cotton for the exterior. It does say you should use vinyl, faux leather, or cork for the exterior. But I know a lot of us have quilt cotton and we want to figure out how to use them in bags. And I'm not the biggest fan of using quilt cotton for lining of bags. So I'm going to try to work this in today. So this is my palette here for the exterior. And then for the lining, as I've been doing, I'm going to be using waterproof canvas. This is water resistant canvas. It is more lightweight than a waterproof canvas. But I really love working with this for linings. Because it is that more lightweight water resistant canvas, it also works great for the card slots. With thicker waterproof canvas, I would not suggest you use that for card slot pockets. For those card slot pockets, if you have a thicker waterproof canvas, you're going to want to use quilt cotton. But this one here, the lightweight one, it can be used for everything in the lining. And for the lining, you're going to need at least a yard. Next up are all the stabilizers. Now, how much you need of all this really depends on the material you're using and which version of the pattern you're going to do. The pattern does have 3 different beautiful quilted options, and they do use different types of interfacing and stabilizers. I'm not doing any of the quilted options today, sadly. I am going to try to keep this very simple, very smooth. So for me, I'm going to have about a yard of Decoville just because I always like to have more than enough Decoville. You'll use it everywhere. So if you have scraps, you'll use those too. I'm using the tiniest bit of woven interfacing because I'm only using it on the quilt cotton pieces for the exterior, which are pretty much just 2 panels. So about a ½ yard is going to be fine for me. However, if you're going to be using it on everything for the lining and maybe for the exterior too, you should probably have at least 2 yards of that. And then I would suggest about a ½ yard of Decoville Heavy. The Decoville Heavy is used just in certain spots, but it is nice to have it. And I wanted to mention that if you wanted the quilted vinyl look, but you don't feel comfortable quilting your own vinyl, this quilted vinyl is becoming so popular right now. This is from Wonderground Fabrics. I have it in a couple different colors. It's amazing. I kind of wish I would have planned to use this for the tutorial today, but I didn't. But yeah, if you want the quilted vinyl look, but you don't want to worry about getting all these spaces correctly, quilted vinyl is available now. All right, so here is my hardware. So I'm going to be using a webbing for the strap. I'm not going to be building my own strap today. My webbing is 1½ inches wide, which means the swivel hooks and the slider need to be the same width. So the pattern might suggest 1 inch hardware for this, but that's not going to work if I have 1½ inch wide webbing. So 1½ inch wide webbing, 1½ inch wide slider, and 2 1½ inch wide swivels. For the anchors on the bag, I'm going to be using 1 inch. You have the option of making a 3/4 inch anchor or a 1 inch anchor. I'll be using 1 inch. So I have 1 inch D-rings here to go with that. Next, you're going to have 2 zippers. You're going to have your main zipper, which is a 13-inch long zipper, and then your pocket zipper, which is an 8-inch long zipper. I do suggest you make that 8-inch long zipper like 12 inches long if you want to install the zipper pocket without having to put it all together in. So I'm gonna walk you through that, but the way the pattern has it done, you kind of install the zipper separately and then you put it together and zip it and I know that can be tricky. So I'm gonna show you how to do it so that you keep the zipper together the whole time. But in order to do that, you do need your zipper to be longer, about 12 inches long, honestly. So then I have 2 zipper pulls to go with the exterior of the bag, so you have that nice double zip, and then I have 1 zipper pull to go on the lining of the bag for the zipper pocket. And then, of course, I have some rivets. I am only doing the crossbody version. I'm not doing the sling version, so I don't need any more hardware than this. However, if you wanted to do the sling version, there's a couple more pieces of hardware you would use. Again, I'm trying to kind of keep it simple today, so I'm only going to do the crossbody version. All right, here's all the other stuff. Of course, my rivet press, absolutely love it. I'm using rivets, so I'm gonna use my rivet press. I'll be using this for decorative pieces on the bag, but also to construct the entire strap. The needles I'm using today, it can be either an 80-12 or a 90-14. If you're using a lot of vinyl, definitely use a 90-14. I like to use an 80-12 because my water-resistant canvas lining is pretty lightweight, and I found that if I use a 90-14 on it, it gets a little difficult to use. So an 80-12 kind of works best for everything. But if I have one section that I'm just like, that's really thick, I'm going to bump it up to a 90-14. I always have this leather double-sided tape. This is going to be really useful today to kind of keep things in place, but if you sew over it, it might gum up your needle, so just do your best not to sew over that. Then I have my 1/4-inch double-sided tape, which is a wash-away one. This you can sew over and you'll be fine. This is for zipper installation usually. I always have my Beacon 3-in-1 glue on hand just in case I need it. I have a stiletto that I keep next to my sewing machine to help me with those curves. A marking tool, a vinyl marking tool, or an air erasing marking tool. These are both really helpful depending on the material that you're using. A seam ripper and stiletto, always. A small lighter for cleaning up loose threads. A 1-inch by 6-inch ruler to help me place everything perfectly. The thread today in my bobbin, as always, is a Gutermann thread. This is just from Joann's. And then the top thread is a Tex 45 weight thread. It's a little bit thicker, so if you're not sure if your machine can handle that, maybe try a Tex 35 weight thread. I'll have links down below. And as always, a whole bunch of clips. All right, let's go through these pattern pieces. Starting with pattern piece A, these are your main exterior panels. You're gonna have 2 of them. I'm using quill cotton. These both have that woven interfacing. Just one layer of it already applied to it. That will be enough because for pattern piece B, we have our Decovil Heavy. Now we're gonna apply this Decovil Heavy to our panels. If you're gonna be quilting your front panel, then you're gonna take one of these to choose as your front panel and you're gonna do a nice quilting design following the instructions. The interfacing that you're using is going to be dependent on what you do. So since I'm not doing any quilting, I will be able to just adhere my Decovil Heavy to both of these starting off. All right, the rest of these are pretty much just rectangles. So you might want to label them in some way or just keep an eye on everything. But up here we have these zipper panels. And this is going to go on either side of the zipper. You're going to need 2 exterior cuts and 2 lining cuts for the zipper panel. And then you're also going to have 2 cuts that are smaller, nice thin cuts of your Decovil Light. This is just, it has a very nice structure to this bag. So you don't skip the stabilizer, okay? Even if you're using vinyl, use the stabilizer. And then for the bottom of the bag, you're gonna have that nice bottom gusset. You're gonna have 1 cut of exterior, 1 cut of lining, and then a smaller cut of Decovil Light. All right, on the back of the bag, we have a nice slip pocket. So you're gonna have 1 cut of your exterior material for the outer part of the slip pocket. And then for the lining of the slip pocket, you're gonna have a smaller cut of your lining material. And then this is how the D-rings get connected. So we have this really nice little accent that runs along the bottom and the sides of the bag on the bottom gusset. You're gonna need 1 cut of vinyl for that. And then you're gonna need 2 small cuts of your Decovil Light. And this is really just that extra reinforcement for where we sew it on and put the rivets. It just provides some extra structure so you don't have to worry about anything ripping. All right, and then I like to group all my lining pieces together. So you're gonna have 2 cuts of vinyl. This is gonna be for the slip pocket inside of the bag. They are the same exact size, so I like to just separate them. So over here is my zipper pocket pieces. So I have my vinyl piece, and then I have 3 different cuts of lining here at different sizes. They're all rectangles, but these are all the pieces you need for your zipper pocket. And all this is labeled in the pattern. So you have zipper pocket slip, and then you have zipper pocket lining, which is the bigger piece, and then you have 2 zipper pocket exterior, 1 zipper pocket exterior 2, things like that. And then over here, we have the material for the card slot pocket, which is again another exterior piece, and then a longer piece here to, make the card slots. And then you're gonna have 4 cuts of pattern piece E. If you have a directional fabric, you're gonna make sure you mirror them because they will be like this. So we're gonna install the pocket, and then we attach these to the side, and then we create that nice little oval shape that the bag has. And then last but not least, this is a bounded bag, meaning we kind of build all the pieces until we have 3 pieces, and then we sew it together. The raw edges are left on the inside, and then we just take our binding and we cover the raw edges. For that, I have 1-inch thick pieces of waterproof canvas. These are about, 58 inches, 52 inches long. They're just the width of the waterproof canvas, but they are 1 inch wide. And all I do is just wrap it around the raw edges in the end, sew it down. It looks perfect. It's very easy. I don't use any sort of double fold binding or anything like that. This is also not cut on the bias. It's just a straight cut. Very simple. So let's start with fusing our material. Since I'm not quilting the exterior at all, I can fuse my Decovil Heavy to the front and back panels. So remember, I'm using this quill cotton or cotton woven, and it already has the sew fuse interfacing on it. So I've already done that. And then when I take my Decovil Heavy pieces, you can see they are smaller, and you just center it. You can grab a ruler if you'd like, or you can just use your eyeballs to center it. I just use the eyeballs. I always cover the back of my Decovil when I'm fusing from the back. Actually, you know what I can do, since this is quilt cotton and I don't normally work with that, I can fuse it. I'm just going to fuse it just a tiny bit from the back, and then I'm going to give it a really good fuse from the front, because that's how Decoville likes to be fused. It likes to be fused from the front. So I'm just going to heat it up on the back just to get it to stick enough so that I can flip it over and I don't have to worry about it detaching and moving around. All right, there we go. Just heated it up. Looks good. I'm going to flip it over, and now I'm going to fuse it from the front. And only do this if you're using a cotton woven material. If you're using vinyl, cork, anything like that, then you just want to have a lot of heat, a lot of steam, and fuse it from the back, which is what we'll do with the Decoville Light and the vinyl over here. All right, so I'm just going to do that for both of my panels. Once again, if you're quilting it, go ahead and follow the instructions, and don't fuse on the Decoville Heavy just yet. Okay, next up are my zipper panels. I'm going to fuse the Decoville Light to the exterior pieces. So the lining gets set to the side, and I'm just going to separate my exterior pieces and center my Decoville Light on the back of them. And since this is vinyl, I do not want to fuse them from the front. So I'm going to do my best to just get them centered on the back as best I can. Here we go. And then I will cover this with a pressing cloth and press it from the back. Okay, I'm just going to do the same thing with the other zipper panel. I'm going to do the same thing with my bottom gusset. I have my smaller cut of Decoville Light. I'm just going to center it on there, and then cover it and press it. All right, and then for the lower connector piece here, you're going to flip it over, and you have these nice small cuts. You're going to measure them 1.5 inch down from the short edge and centered, and just fuse them on the back like that. So the first step is to build your lower connector, and then your sling connectors and your strap. Since I'm not doing the sling connectors and my strap is just a piece of webbing, I am just going to be doing my lower connector. So on the back of the lower connector, what you're going to want to do is draw a line that runs along the center horizontally. Now I'm going to grab my double-sided tape, my really sticky stuff, and I'm going to run it right along that center line. And I'm not going all the way to the edge. I'm going about 1/2 inch away from the edge. It'd be easier if I had 1/2 inch wide tape, but you're going to pull back the tape and then fold your long raw edges, wrong sides together, up to meet that middle line. And just go down, doing this for both sides. So after I get that on there, I'm going to use some of these. These are like hair clips, but they're perfect in sewing. They're great to hold material together because they're nice and long and they don't really leave marks. So I'm going to use these to just hold it together for me. Even though I have that tape, this helps too. So now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch 3/8 inch away from each of the folded edges of our bottom connector. And if you're doing sling connectors, you're going to do the same thing. If you're building your strap, you're going to be building it a little bit differently, so make sure you refer to the instructions for that. All right, this little bottom accent's ready to go. I'm going to set this to the side. The pattern has you work on the strap now, so let's go ahead and do that. So with this webbing, I love this webbing, but the ends fray very badly, so you need to take a lighter and you need to melt down the raw edges so it doesn't cause a mess. Nice and melty. There we go. Let that cool. So I just do that on both sides right off the bat. So to build our strap, first we're going to install the slider. So take one raw edge and push your material up and over that middle bar of the slider. You can have your material come down about 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches, and I like to fold it under so that even though I did melt down those raw edges, they're still tucked in underneath here. I don't have to worry about them eventually rubbing against something so many times that they start becoming a problem. So I have it tucked under. Let's see how much this is. Let's see, I have it tucked under 3/4 inch, so there you go. It's tucked under 3/4 inch. And then I'm just going to use a pen to eyeball. I'm going to do 2 rivets since this is a wider strap. I'm going to go on one side and then the other. There we go. Doing my best to keep it straight. There are lots of tools out there to help you place these types of rivets. Actually, I think I have one. Let me see. Yep, I have one of these. This is from Emporium Threads. This is really cool. But what you can do, you can see it has 4 holes on here. You can kind of remeasure this, fold it over a little bit different so that you can just easily bing, 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 do 4. Isn't that cool? I think that's really neat. So you can do them either way, or you can just use the placement for 2 of them. This is a cool tool. So if you have a hard time getting things centered and you're not sure if it's too close to the edge, use something like this. I'll have a link down below. So I have that marked, and now I'm just going to punch a hole through the 3 layers. Remember, I have it folded over. So there's 3 layers there. Just punch it through both the dots. There we go. I like to use a clip to just kind of keep it together. I'm going to grab my rivets, and I'm just going to pop them through those holes that I marked. And rivets are nice because they just kind of snap shut like that. Okay, now, so I'm going to take my slider and I'm going to hold it up so that this folded over edge is facing up and keeping my strap nice and straight. Pull it out. I'm going to grab one of my swivel hooks and insert it so that the swivel part is facing down. And then I just pull the webbing through there. Again, keeping it straight, and then I fold it over. Fold over the webbing just like that, so now the swivel you see is on top. And it's going to go up through the side that has the fold over. So for me, that's the right side. Up through there. Give it some nice slack. And all the way through the other side on the left. And pull it tight. Pull your swivel down so you can see your swivel is kind of tucked into a fold like that. Your slider's in the middle. Everything looks nice. And then you have this remaining raw edge. Take your remaining swivel with it. Swivel on the right side. So look at your slider if you need to. And then fold over the raw edge, and again, you can double fold it like I do, about 3/4 of an inch. Here, we can use the tool this time to help us mark this. So I'm just gonna use 2 holes. So I'm just gonna doot and doot. Lovely. That's a little low. Well, I think that'll be okay. That'll be okay. I should have marked them a little bit higher up than that, but that's fine. So now I'm gonna punch these holes. And then I'll grab my rivets and just snap in my rivets. And then I have my rivet press that has the dies for the rivets. So these are, I believe these are 9mm rivets, and I have a 10mm die in there. You could, if you have a 9mm die, just use the 9mm die. But if you don't have the right size die for your rivets, you can always go up a size and it'll be fine. Go, and then don't forget to press these ones. So you just make sure you pull everything out of the way so you're only pressing the rivets, not anything else. All right, there we go. Now we have a nice crossbody strap all ready to go. You can set this to the side. All right, I skipped quite a few pages of instructions because I'm not quilting the bag and I'm not doing the sling strap connectors. So if you were hoping I would show you that, I'm sorry. I do apologize. But I encourage you to give it a try if you're interested in quilting your bag. So now we're going to work on the exterior pocket. This is a little slip pocket on the back of the bag. You're going to need your exterior pocket exterior piece and your exterior pocket lining. And if you have a direction, make sure you know, this is the top. And we're going to take our pieces and lay them right sides together, lining them up at the top. And just use some clips to hold them together. And now let's sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, once you have those sewn together, you're going to press the lining and the exterior away from each other, flip it over, and press open the seam on the back. Just like that. And you might want to use tape, you might want to use an iron, whatever can help you. I mean, with vinyl, I wouldn't use an iron. I'm just going to kind of hold it like that at the sewing machine and just keep checking underneath to make sure that it's flat. But now we're going to go back and we're going to top stitch on both edges of this seam at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And again, just keep checking to make sure your seam is flat. The whole point of this is to flatten out this seam really nicely. I don't know if you can tell, but this vinyl has a little bit of a stick and a stretch to it. It's really nice. It's nice and drapey and lightweight, easy to work with, not bulky. But because it has a bit of a stick and a bit of a stretch to it, getting a good top stitch is difficult. I have it set as a 3.5mm top stitch, and I don't even know if you can tell, but this is much, much smaller than a 3.5 because it's sticking. So one thing I do when I'm dealing with that to help is I increase the length of my top stitching to like a 4mm, maybe even a 4.5mm length. I just want to show you, this is me trying to do a 3.5mm top stitch, and it is way too small. So on the next one I'm going to show you, we're going to up it and see if that works out better. So we're going to flip this over and we're going to fold the lining and the exterior wrong sides together, and it's not going to go all the way down to the bottom though. You're going to only have it go down about 5/8 of an inch from the bottom edge. So grab a ruler, and you might even find it easier to mark a line, just 5/8 of an inch from the bottom edge of the vinyl, and then just pull the lining down to meet that line. And then what I do is I grab a clip and I clip down here on the side, and then I just gently smooth up to the top. I'm not pushing it because again, some of this stuff can stretch. I'm not pushing it, I'm just gently flattening it. So again, I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. There we go. And then I'll do the same thing in the middle, but just kind of push it down with my fingers like this. And now I'm gonna add clips along this top folded edge to hold it in place exactly how I want it. Okay, now we're gonna flip this over and we're gonna top stitch along this top folded edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, since my vinyl is a little stretchy and sticky, I'm going to increase it to about like a 4mm. I'm gonna try a 4mm stitch length. Okay, that looks much, much better. And I know if you have an industrial sewing machine, your top stitching it can be like 6.5mm long. I know that's a much, much bigger top stitching length. But for a domestic machine, a lot of times we like to stick to a smaller stitch length because our thread isn't super thick. So we can't really get really long stitches without the thread potentially breaking once it's in use. So, something to think about. Okay, so unclip the sides if you did clip them. Now we're gonna take the two pieces, the lining and the exterior, and we're gonna fold them right sides together and line up the long raw edges and clip together. Now we'll sew along this edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So once you have that sewn together, now you're gonna make like a little tube and you're just gonna flip the whole thing right side out. And then what you do is you have your top stitch top here still, and you're going to do your best to just fold down the bottom. And it's not perfect. You're gonna have a little bit of the exterior peeking on the top where the top stitching is, and also on the bottom down here. That's the point of all this. So just try to flatten it out as best you can. I like to use clips to help me get it nice and flat. All right, once you have that all good to go, grab your back panel, and if you have the cool sling connectors, that's the panel with that, and lay it right side up. And then you're gonna take your pocket with the exterior right side up and the edge that you already top stitched, that's the top of the pocket, you're gonna lay it on top of your back panel. And we're gonna line up this bottom edge here 1/2 inch from the bottom of the exterior panel. You might want to use some sort of a marking tool. I'm gonna use an air erasing marker, so I'm just gonna measure 1/2 inch from the bottom edge here and mark a line. Now we wanna line up that bottom edge with that. And I know this is tricky because we have these clips. Just do your best, line it up with the bottom edge that you marked, and then make sure the sides are lined up. If the sides overhang, that's fine. We can trim those down. Don't worry about it being exact. We just wanna try to attach it as best as possible. Okay. Not doing the sides yet. Now what we're gonna do is we're going to top stitch down the bottom edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, only the bottom edge. Okay, go ahead and take the clips off. This should be secured now on the bottom edge. And in the pattern, they suggest you take your top corner, and we're not gonna line it up right on the edge of the back panel. We're going to push it in about 1/8 of an inch. Just a scotch. Push it in 1/8 of an inch and then clip it down, and then clip the rest of the edge of the pocket to the edge of the back panel. Do this for both sides. All right, so this is what it looks like. You see it has a little poof. And the point of this is that in the end, when it all turns out, this actually helps it lay neater. It doesn't have it ripple. There's a method for the madness. I just want to show you, if you flip it over, you can see I have some edges down here. That's perfectly fine. Don't worry about overhang. So now we're going to baste down these sides at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to trim it down. You could have trimmed these down before you basted it on. That's probably a better idea because that makes sure you catch the edges, but this is fine. This is fine. Okay, so now the pattern suggests we rivet down the edges. And this is especially important if you have the sling connectors, because you can use the sling connectors on the back to help you place it. But since we do not, so I don't know how precise we need to have this to work, but I did this in the last one and it was fine. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing it down in the middle, and you see I have bubbling on the right and the left, right? And I'm gonna measure in 1.5 inches from the right side and 3/4 of an inch from the top, but I'm not like flattening this part down here. I'm kind of letting it bubble a little bit. I'm just placing it on top of there and measuring down. Mark a dot. This is for placement of the rivets. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Now I'm gonna grab my hole punch. And again, like I said, I'm not like pressing this down. I'm kind of just pressing it down in the middle, but not pressing down the sides. I'm letting it bubble up a little bit, even where I marked. And then I'm just gonna push through. Honestly, I think I'm making this a little bit more stressful than it needs to be. I don't think it needs to be terribly precise. This is just to make it look a little bit better in the end. Well, there we go. I think that'll work. So now I'm gonna grab some rivets and install my rivets here. I'm gonna grab my rivet press. And I know it seems a little bumpy, and I think when we turn it out, it'll be okay though. All right, we have our back panel all ready to go. Before we move on, I am going to install my bag tag, which of course I forgot to show you. Today I'm using a metal bag tag. So for that, I have the metal bag tag and I have a washer. And one thing we should have done at the very beginning is mark midpoints on all these. So I'm gonna mark the midpoints on the top and the bottom of both of these exterior front and back panels. And for this, since I don't have a quilting on here, I don't have like a perfect spot to put my tag. So if you do any of the quilted versions, there's usually like a good suggestion on where to put your bag tag. I'm just gonna measure, let's see, I like it about right there. So that is going to be about 2.5 inches down from the top and centered. And what I always do with these types of bag tags is take my washer and see how this lines up, because it doesn't always line up. My prongs don't line up with the very exterior holes for this washer, so I just kind of figure out where it is and figure out where my midpoint is. And then I'm gonna line up my washer so that the midpoint of my washer is right over that marked dot and level as possible, as straight as possible. And then I'm gonna mark placement for the slits, and then I'll grab a seam ripper and very gently cut right along those slits. And then I'll grab my metal bag tag, insert it through the front of my material. Go. And then insert the washer on the back. And I press open the prongs. Let's look on the front, make sure it's pretty straight. I mean, yeah, that looks good. That's cute, right? And then just to protect the lining, what I'm gonna do is cover this. So I've got some scraps of Deco Light here. You could also just use some fabric, some vinyl. You could use fusible fleece, whatever you have, but since I have Deco Light, I'll use that. And what I do is, you could fuse this if it's fusible, you could just put an iron over it and do that, but I find it's quicker and easier just to grab my beacon 3-in-1 glue. I'm gonna cover the back of my material with the glue, and then I just press it over those prongs. There we go. And if it's kind of coming up, just find something to put on top of it and then let that dry. So now we're gonna work on the bottom gusset. So take your lower connector and lay it right side up. Grab your super sticky double-sided tape, and we're gonna lay it on the back of this about 2 inches away from each short edge. Just have it go right down the center. And then make sure you got your D-rings. And we can remove the paper from the double-sided tape on the back. Now take one of your D-rings, and the rounded part needs to go on the right side. So the flat part goes on the back. Let's see, I'm gonna measure. So I'm gonna measure just 3 inches down from this raw edge and make a small mark on the back of my connector, just so I can see what I'm doing. So I have a little tiny tick mark right here, again on the wrong side. And then I'm gonna insert my D-ring, and I'm gonna fold this raw edge back to meet that tick mark. There we go. So now you can see it's stuck to the tape. My D-ring is good. The rounded edge is on the outside. There we go. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Just mark 3 inches in and make a tiny tick mark on the back just so I know exactly where to fold this. Insert my D-ring. Go. And just push it down like that. And then grab a couple more pieces of double-sided tape just to cover the raw edge right here of the strap, like a 1 inch or 1.5 inch long piece of double-sided tape, just like that. So just set that to the side. Don't let it touch anything because it is very sticky. Okay, so on my exterior gusset on the right side, I marked a few lines. First, I have a line marked from the bottom, and it's 1 3/8 of an inch up from the bottom. And this is because I'm using a 1 inch wide connector here. If you're using the other size, it's a different marking. So 1 3/8 inch from the bottom. And then I also made small marks 1 inch in from the edge. Because what we want to do is we want to take this and we want to center it on our gusset. And it's a little hard to do without being able to mark a bunch of midpoints. So what we're going to do is remove the remaining paper from the tapes. And we want the ends to come about 1 inch in from the short edges, and we want the bottom edge of this to line right up with that mark that we have here. All right, so that looks pretty centered. And if you still have that silver, this is a vinyl marking tool, I can grab like a paper towel and I can just wipe it off. It'll come right off. All right, so this looks good. So now we're going to top stitch along this bottom connector here at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So 1/8 of an inch along the long edges. When it comes to the D-rings, I'm going to keep it about 3/4 of an inch away from the D-ring because I am going to be inserting a rivet here. So if you can see the bottom edge of your connector material right here, you really just want to make sure you top stitch over that, but you don't have to get right up against the D-ring because if you have rivets, we're going to rivet it anyways. But we do want to make sure when we top stitch the short sides that we do come over that bottom raw edge right there. All right, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to flip it over, and if you left the tails long, you can go ahead and pull your top thread, bobbin threads, everything to the back, and knot them really, really well. That just helps hide anything. I did backstitch a little bit. Honestly, I ran out of bobbin right there, so I can't tie all of them. Okay, so now this is all stitched down. Now we're going to grab the hole punch, and we're going to just add a couple of rivets. Just for extra security, I'm going to mark the holes first, so using my stitching, I can mark some midpoints. There we go. So I'm just going to punch out those holes. And then I just take my rivets and just snap them in there. Doesn't that look nice? And then I will grab my rivet press and press down these rivets. There we go. The bottom gusset's all ready to go. I'm going to set this to the side. So you can see I did not pre-cut my zipper tape. I actually like it to be a little bit longer than I need it to be right off the bat, and then I'll trim it down. So if you want it to be the exact same length, then go ahead and do that. I like to just room for error, you know? And then I'm going to take my 2 zipper pulls, and I'm going to actually install them on opposite ends. So that way you can open and close with the double zipper. So I'm going to put one on this side. There we go. And then I'm going to put the other one on the other side. So grab your zipper and lay your zipper right side up. These zipper pulls are big. It's going to get in the way. And then I'm going to grab a lining. I'm going to lay my lining right side up just like that. I'm going to take my zipper tape and laying it right side up. Lining right side up. I'm just going to lay it on top. Now, if it's the same length, make sure it matches up on the sides. Since my zipper is longer, it's okay. I'm going to grab some clips, and I'm just going to clip along this top edge right here. And now I'm going to baste this at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you have the lining basted on, grab an exterior piece and lay that right side down along the same top edge. And make sure you line it up. If your zipper is the same length, then everything should line up perfectly. If your zipper is longer like mine, then you're going to need to pay attention to that and make sure you line it up with the lining, not the edge of the zipper. So I do the edges first. I'm just kind of looking at the back here where the lining is, making sure I line up the exterior and the lining together. And then I'll grab the clips and just go along this entire top edge, clipping together. And now let's sew along this edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once that's sewn on, go ahead and press your exterior and your lining, ooh, that's loud, wrong sides together. And if you're using material that you don't feel comfortable ironing, I find just getting the raw edges to match up will help a lot. So clip the raw edges together. Okay, and once you have it all nice and pressed down, we're going to just top stitch along the folded edge right next to the zipper coils at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so there's one side. We're just going to repeat that with the other side. So grab the remaining lining zipper panel and lay it right side up. Then take the opposite end of your zipper, laying your zipper right side up. And at this point, actually, you should trim down your zipper tape. It'll make it easier. So I'm just going to trim down my zipper tape so it's the same length as the zipper panels. Okay, so now when I take my lining panel and lay it right side up, I take my zipper tape and lay it right side up and just match it up and clip in place. Okay, now let's baste along that clipped edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now take your exterior piece and lay that right sides down so it's right side against the right side of the zipper. Line it up along that edge. Everything should be matching up pretty well right now. And just clip in place. Now let's sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, now flip the exterior and the lining, wrong sides together. And you can iron it if you feel comfortable doing that. Like I said before, I just match up the raw edges on the bottom here. All right, and now let's just top stitch right along this folded edge by the zipper tape at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now you're going to need your zipper panel, your bottom gusset, and your bottom gusset lining. And this will finish up the whole gusset. So take your bottom gusset lining and lay it right side up, and then take your zipper panel and lay it right side up on top so its linings are right sides together. And let's match up the right edge first. You can see I still have my clips along the side of my zipper panel. You don't really need that right now. It's not gonna go anywhere. You can unclip that. But we do want to clip the short edge over here on the right together. Now take your gusset bottom exterior, fold the D-rings in towards the inside for now, and then lay your gusset exterior right side down, so right sides together with the exterior of the zipper panel, and include it over here on those right side clips. We're only dealing with one side at a time, just this right side, so line it all up. Okay, once you have it all clipped together, let's sew along this edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once that's stitched in place, flip the exterior and the lining wrong sides together, just like that, and get it nice and flat and lined up. There we go. And now we're going to top stitch along this edge on the bottom gusset side at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. So let's repeat that with the other side. So take the lining portion and lay it right side up, and then take the zipper panel and pull it over so that the zipper panel is right sides together with the lining. Get those lined up first and clip together, and then take the exterior piece and fold that up so that it's right sides together with the zipper panel and clip together. There we go. Try to make sure it's all nice and straight. If it's easier for you, go ahead and baste the lining to the zipper panel first and then sew on the exterior. Sometimes that can be easier. All right, so now this clipped edge right here, we're just going to sew at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, now flip the lining and the exterior wrong sides together. Let's flip everything out like that. There we go. Just make sure you really pull at the lining and exterior so they're nice and taut around that seam. And now we're going to top stitch along this bottom seam right here at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have that all connected, now we just need to clip all of these raw edges together. And the trick with this is just to make sure you straighten out the section you're working on. If you kind of keep it in this circular shape, you'll find at the end that the lining is bunched up. It's the same length as the exterior, but you do need to straighten it out to get it to line up correctly. So I just go section by section, kind of straightening it out. And this is why it's also good to clip this before you baste it, because if you're like, I'll just go baste it together, sometimes you'll end up with some pleats in your lining. Go ahead and re-clip around the zipper panels. Do the same thing on the other side. All right, so now I'm going to go baste along both of these raw edges at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Your gusset is now done. Go ahead and set that to the side and let's work on the lining. So now let's work on the zipper pocket lining. These are all the pieces you're going to need, and I know they're all rectangles, so you kind of have to keep measuring them to make sure you remember which is which. Okay, and the way they're going to have you do the zipper in the pattern is they're going to have you separate the zipper tape into 2 sections and sew them on separately, and then use your zipper pull to bring it all back together. It's a very simple, it makes it very easy to do the pocket that way. But I know from the comments a lot of people are very uncomfortable doing that. So I'm going to show you how I do it by keeping the zipper intact. So I'm going to cut my zipper to about 12 inches or so, nice and long. And then I'm going to insert my zipper pull. There we go. So I just put my zipper pull on halfway so it's still closed on both edges. And then this big piece here for the lining is our zipper pocket lining. The smallest piece is the zipper pocket exterior number 1, and then the medium-sized one is the zipper pocket exterior number 2. So now let's take the zipper pocket lining and lay it right side up. And then we're going to take our zipper, and when the zipper is closed, it should be going towards the left, okay? And then we want to put our zipper tape on here so that a good amount of overhang is over here on the right. And this is the part that stays closed all the time. And there's a reason for this if you're building this without separating your zipper tape. If you're following the instructions, what you're actually going to do is just not put your zipper pull on at all, and you're going to separate your zipper tape into 2 pieces, and you're going to sew the top and the bottom of the zipper tape per the instructions. But we're going to keep it all in one go. Now we're going to baste along this top edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So once you have that basted on, grab your zipper pocket exterior number 1, which is the smallest of them, and we're going to lay that right side down. We're going to lay it right side down on top of the zipper side that we just basted. Make sure it matches up with the edge of the zipper pocket lining panel. And now sew this all together at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once you have those stitched together, let's flip both lining panels wrong sides together, just like that. And try to get that zipper nice and straight. There we go. And now let's top stitch right along this edge of the zipper lining at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so this is where we have to diverge from the pattern just a little bit. So now we're going to take that bigger zipper lining pocket and we're going to bring it up to the other side of our zipper tape. So you might want to flip it over. So we're bringing the right side of the large zipper pocket lining up to meet the back of the zipper tape. Make sure it's lined up on the edges with the zipper pocket linings you already have. And let's clip along the edge of our zipper tape. All right, so I'm gonna flip this over. Now I'm gonna baste along this edge of the zipper tape at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so now let's lay this so that the zipper is facing right side up. And let's take our remaining zipper pocket exterior number 2 and lay that right side down to the zipper along the raw edge that we're working with. As always, make sure it's lined up with the sides of the zipper lining you already have in place. And let's just clip along that edge. And now let's sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, now this is why we had to keep our zipper long if we wanted to keep it all together. Flip that exterior pocket lining number 2 out of the way. And now what we want to do is we do want to open up the open edge of our zipper. So you see when it closes, it goes that way, but don't close it all the way. We don't want to lose our zipper pull. We are going to pull our zipper pull back off the edge. You might want to grab a clip and keep the clip on the end like that to make sure this does not come off. You could also sew over this edge right here just to make sure your zipper pull doesn't come off. The whole point of this is so we don't have to attach the zipper pull after everything's sewn together. And what you want to do is you want to fold both the lining pieces away from one another, just like we did on the other side. So you just have to keep working with that other side of the zipper and make sure it stays out of your way. There we go. So once you have that nice and flat, now we can take this to the sewing machine and just top stitch right along this edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, just making sure you're keeping the other side of the zipper and all the other lining stuff out of the way, and also don't lose your zipper pull. All right, there we go. So now move your zipper pull to the center, and if you'd like, you can go ahead and stitch right along the edge over here of this open end so you don't have to worry about moving around. I find it doesn't give me too much trouble. Now what we want to do is we want to take both of these zipper pocket lining pieces that have the raw edges and we want to fold them wrong sides together. And so what you might want to do is just ignore everything else and just focus on these bottom raw edges and clip them together. Remember, they're wrong sides together. And then what we do is we kind of just flatten it all out. So pull on the lining and you'll notice that you have a little bit of a fold over on the top here, which is really, really cute. So let's just flatten this out as best we can. I will close my zipper some, but I'm careful not to lose it. There we go. I'm just gonna add some clips along the side to hold this in place. And then I'll add clips to the top as well. And the goal, you're just trying to make it look as tidy as possible. If it's not perfect, that's fine. It's a lining pocket. You just want it to be tidy, you know? There we go. So I like to keep it all clipped like this, but now let's go top stitch along this top folded edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so now let's grab that exterior vinyl piece for the pocket, for the slip, and we're just gonna lay this on top of it, and the short edges should match up. And you know what, if you haven't trimmed down your zipper tape like I haven't, let's go ahead and trim that down. Just gonna trim down my zipper tape so it's just a nice rectangle now. All right, now lay your vinyl right side up. Take your pocket with the zipper and lay that right side up, and it should match up with the sides. And we'll just line it up with the bottom edge here and just clip it all together. So as you can tell, my zipper is kind of the opposite of what I wanted it to be in the end, which is fine. So I'll put a little note back there telling you to do the opposite direction just in case. I could remove the zipper and then reinsert it the right way. If you guys want to see that, here, I'll just show you. I'll just show you. So that way, if you're thinking about doing it at some point, you can see it's not impossible. So let me show you. So if you were doing this the way the pattern suggested, at some point you would have had something like this, and all you have to do is open up the end you want it to come on in the direction you want it to go, right? And what I do is I look at the zipper coils, and I can't get the camera close enough for this, but on the right side, the coils, you know, they pancake on top of each other, right? They zipper each other, right? The top coil is the right side. So I open it up, just like that. Then I insert my zipper, pointy side going down, and I put the right side in first, and then I'll put the left side in. And then I look from the top, and I can see the very top of these zipper coils, and I'm just making sure that the right coil is on top. That's all. There we go. And then I just kind of push it down with my finger, and then I'll hold down the side as I zip it on, and there we go. Now my zipper pull will close to the left when closed, just like I wanted. And you can see it's not that difficult if you're comfortable working with zipper pulls. I would say as long as you don't have any problem putting zipper pulls on, then that should be easy. The hard part is like if one side has 3 coils that's higher than the other, and then it's all skewed off and twisted. All right, so let's go back and just clip this to that piece of vinyl. And I love this little pocket. I would say this is probably the most useful of all lining pockets. Having the zipper and a slip, like that is just so useful as a lining pocket. All right, now let's baste at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along the sides and the bottom to hold this all in place. Alrighty, so now let's add the sides. So you have your little rounded side pieces here. We're just going to take them and lay them right sides together on the left and right sides, and they should match up pretty perfectly. So now let's sew along both these edges at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once you have those stitched in place, we just fold the sides back, and the seams should go towards the side here. You can press it with an iron if you'd like, but now we're going to top stitch right along these sides at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, that lining panel is done. I forgot to show you this in the beginning, and I forgot to sew it in. I'd meant to sew in this little fold over tab into the lining right here. It's so cute, but I'll do it on the next pocket, so I'm just going to set that to the side. Now let's work on the credit card slots. So let's grab all the pieces for the credit card slots, which is just an exterior piece, a nice long lining piece, 2 more of your sides of the lining, and then if you have a fun tag, let's add that too. Okay, so to prep the credit card slots, you're going to look at that the back of your material, the wrong side of your material. And there are templates that the pattern has that you can print and help you trace this, or you can just use a ruler, which is what I like to do. So starting from the left, we're going to measure in 5.5 inches and make a vertical line. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but it is I'm using my silver pen for this. Again, this is the wrong side of the material. After that line, we're going to make another line that's 2 1/4 of an inch from this first vertical line. So now you should have 2 lines. From that second line, we're going to measure 1 3/4 of an inch and make a third line. Okay, so now we have 3 lines. So then we're going to do the 2 1/4 of an inch, 1 3/4 of an inch. That's set 2 more times. So the next line I'm going to do is 2 1/4 of an inch, which is right here, and then again 1 3/4 of an inch. All right, and once you're done, you should have about 4 inches or more left over from the last line. Okay, so now for card slots, we're just going to kind of accordion fold them. So starting at this line over here that's 5.5 inches from the left, we're going to fold our material wrong sides together. And that's easiest if you just pinch at each side. So you pinch where you find the line at the sides, and then I just make sure it's lined up on the sides. There we go. And I'm using a hot iron, but it is a dry iron. I'm not using steam. And with waterproof canvas, when you get it hot, it wants to kind of unfold real fast, but if you just give it a good press with your fingers as it cools, It stays very crisp and perfect. I love that. All right, so the next line, the second line, we're gonna fold that so that the fabric is right sides together. And for that, I actually just press it with my fingers. Remember, I'm using waterproof canvas, so I don't really want to press the back side of the waterproof canvas. I only want to press the front side. If you're using quilt cotton, go ahead and grab your iron and press it. But I'm just going to press it with my fingers. And then I'm going to go to the third line. And I'm going to press the third line wrong sides together. And on that third line, since I'm dealing with the front side of the material, I can press it with the iron. So I press it like that, flatten it out, and then I'll fold the whole unit like it's supposed to be. So remember that second line was folded with the material right sides together. So I'll get it all refolded, line up the edges really nice, make sure this looks straight enough, and then I'll press it from the right side. And now what I'm doing is I'm pretty much pressing that second middle fold in there that I couldn't press with the iron originally because I would have to press the wrong side. There we go. So now I'm just going to continue with that. So next line is material right side together. And one thing, as I'm pressing, I'm always keeping an eye on the sides here because that's where you really want to make sure you don't accidentally have it start veering off. All right, next one. Press these wrong sides together. So I press the edge by itself first, let it cool off, and then I'll refold all the edges and then give it a good press. Alrighty, when you're done, you should have 4 card slot pockets, and then this back one will end up being a slip pocket. So now we're going to top stitch along all of the 5 folded edges. So we're just going to top stitch each one of these at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once you have those top stitched, what you want to do is measure in 4 1/4 of an inch from the left side and draw a line with some sort of an air erasing, water erasing marker, something like that. We're just drawing a midpoint line here. And now we're just going to top stitch right along this midpoint line through all the card slots, just separates them so we can have a total of 8 card slot pockets, and just stitch all the way from the bottom up to the top and make sure you back stitch at the top. All right, now we need to trim this down a little bit. You're gonna use this midpoint line you just stitched and measure 4 inches from each side of it and trim off any excess. All right, now that you have the sides trimmed off, let's flip this over. And now we're gonna measure from the top edge, which is this edge right here. We're gonna measure from that edge down 5 1/4 inch and then trim off the excess down here. All right, there we go. Now let's grab our vinyl slip pocket piece for this, and we're just gonna lay our card slot unit right on top of it, and the sides should match up and the bottom edge should match up. Should be nice and clean. Grab some clips and clip this together. So the right side of the card slots are facing up and the right side of the vinyl is facing up. And just so I don't forget, I'm going to grab my little tag here, and I'm just gonna put it about 1.5 inches up from the bottom, right there. That's cute. It's not covering any of the card slot pockets, but it's good right there. So now we're gonna baste this down on the sides of the bottom at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alrighty, last thing to do is grab those side panels that round off the sides, and let's lay them on the sides, right sides together with the card slot pockets, facing just like that, and clip together. Alright, now let's sew along these clipped edges at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And now let's just press these side panels open. Look how cool that is. Isn't that fun? A little tag right there. I love it. All right, once you have them pressed open, let's just top stitch along the sides at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So that's the last piece of the lining. Now we can put the whole bag together. You should have about 5 pieces. We have the gusset, that's all ready to go. Now we just have to prep the exterior and lining pieces together. So decide which side lining you want to go on the back. I'm gonna have the zip pocket go on the back. So here's my back panel, here's my lining with the zip pocket. I'm gonna lay them wrong sides together, line them up. You might want to find the midpoint on the lining. That might make it easier to get it lined up as centered as possible. So I'm just going to do midpoints on top and bottom of all my panels. And while I'm doing midpoints, let's do the midpoint on the top and bottom of the gusset as well. So with the gusset, I just line up the connector part right here. I line those up. and that will help me find the midpoint on the zipper panel. So mark both sides, and then I'll also be able to mark the midpoint on the bottom of the gusset as well. Okay, so I have my lining for the back panel. I'm just going to clip them wrong sides together, matching up the midpoints first. I find that my lining is usually a little bit bigger than my exterior, so you can see the lining peeks through on the side over here. That's okay, just make sure you have it centered, and we'll trim it down after we baste it together. So I'm just gonna clip these together. All right, so that one's prepped. Now I'm gonna do the front panel. So front panel and card slot panels, wrong sides together. And I'm gonna use those midpoint marks to line them up first. Okay, so now I'm gonna flip them. So I'm looking at the exterior panels, and I'm gonna baste these together at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. As you can tell, like on this one, the lining is quite a bit bigger on the left side for some reason. I'm not really sure why. I probably sewed something on at the wrong seam allowance or something, but that's okay because I'll just trim it down after I baste it all together. So now my exterior panels I know are the exact size they need to be. So I'm going to trim down any lining that's peeking over on the sides. All right, now the hard part, let's put it all together. Let's start with the back panel and the gusset. And how hard this is really depends on how much your vinyl fights you. So I'm gonna take the back panel and lay it right side up, and then I'm gonna take my gusset, these are making too much noise. I'm gonna take my gusset, and I'm gonna take the exterior and lay it right side down. And we're gonna match up the midpoint of the top zipper panel with the top of the back. Okay, don't do this upside down. That would be devastating. Don't install this upside down. So midpoint of the zipper panel with the midpoint on the top of the back panel. Here we go. So I do one clip at the midpoint, and then I add a clip on each side of it so it doesn't twist around on me. Okay, and turn it around. Make sure I flip it all, lining side out. Find the midpoint on the bottom of the gusset and the midpoint on the bottom of your back panel, and clip those together. All right, so now I like to flip it over to the lining side of the back panel, and I'm just gonna go around and tuck in around these corners. I keep my gusset straight, kind of like a wall, and then I tuck in the corners of the back panel like a bowl. So you always try to do the straight edges first, and then the corners last. But with this one, because it's a smaller size, you can really just go around the whole thing. Just make sure you do the midpoints first. All right, once you have it all clipped together and you've kind of worked out all the little pleats and everything, we're gonna take this to the sewing machine, and we're gonna sew along this whole edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I like to keep a pair of scissors next to me, because when we sew this, we're gonna sew it with the gusset lining side up. We're gonna sew it just like this. And as we go around these corners, if I find that my main panel is going to the right and my gusset is pulling to the left and I can't seem to get them back together, it's because that corner is just too tight. And what we need to do is we need to take our scissors and clip just like 1/8 of an inch into the gusset so that the gusset can spread out a little bit more. Pull it back over and stitch it down. I will be using a zipper foot. A zipper foot is just easier because you don't have as much stuff having to lay flat. And just go slow. Use your stiletto to keep it in place. Use your left hand to keep pushing the gusset so that it's lining up with the edge of the main panel. Just go slow. There we go. I'll be honest, so far that was easier than my other bag because the vinyl I used on the other bag was a lot stiffer. And so if you want, you can kind of push it out. I didn't have any pleating problems, so that is looking so good. Don't you love these colors? I know. I wasn't sure it was going to work either, but I think it's going to work. All right, so now let's add the binding. The binding is much, much easier to add. I actually like to start at the top here because I feel like this is the least noticeable space. So I'm just taking my waterproof canvas binding. I'm just gonna wrap it around that raw edge on so it's the right side of the waterproof canvas is facing up, the wrong side is against the raw edge. And all I do is go around the whole raw edge of that seam and just cover it up, hugging it with the binding. It's very simple. So once I get close to the edge, I have my binding overlap the original binding by about an inch, inch and a half. I don't measure it. And then I just cut it off. And so as I clip it on, I'm just gonna remove that first clip and just overlap it like that. And see, doesn't that look great? All right, so now I'm gonna go stitch this on at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You wanna get close to the edge, but you don't wanna kind of interfere with the first stitching you already did. All right, after you stitch that down, just check the back and make sure you caught all of the edges. I know in the corner sometimes I don't catch it perfectly. I have a lot of pleating in my binding. I don't have a problem with that. But that side looks good. Now let's just attach the front panel. So just like before, we're gonna do front panel exterior, right sides with the exterior of the gusset, lining up the midpoints on the top and bottom, and just triple check to make sure you got the top and bottom. One of these days we're gonna sew these front panels down upside down, and that's not gonna be fun. So sewing on this second panel is a little bit harder than sewing on the first panel, because now that that first panel is sewed on, it's gonna fight you a little bit, and you can't just push the gusset out of the way. But it really just depends on your material as well. I'm hoping with this thinner vinyl and the quilt cotton, it might be a little bit easier for us. All right, once you have this all clipped together, we're gonna sew this with the gusset lining side up at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. This is much more difficult because pushing this down is tricky, but you're gonna wanna do that. You're gonna wanna make sure this does not get in your way when you're sewing. Go slow. Again, clip into the gusset if you need to, but go slow. Alright, that one is definitely trickier. So make sure you go around the sides. Make sure it all looks okay. Alright, looking good. Looking good. So now let's take the last piece of binding. And again, I like to start at the top. And I'm just going to take my binding and wrap it around those raw edges. Just covering them up. I almost feel like you're just like cheating here, you know, you're just covering up those raw edges. You're not even worrying about tucking them into the bag. Just like before, I cut my binding so that it just overhangs the start by about an inch. All right, now we're gonna go top stitch this at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance and just go slow. And again, I do it from the lining gusset side up. Make sure you check the back and make sure you caught everything. Once you're happy with it, let's turn it out. It can be a little tricky to turn out, so don't put too much pressure on the edges of these zippers over here. You can rip this stuff. Gently turn it out. All right, once you have it flipped out, just roll out those rounded corners. It's looking really good. And if you've got a bunch of wrinkles or anything like that, you can grab an iron and just iron it. I'm probably gonna do that. All right, so once you have it pressed, you can just grab your strap, clip that on. Oh, this is so cute. Zip it up so you can get that nice shape. And look how sweet that is. I love this bag so much. I love this bag so much. And I love that we used quilt cotton. I think it turned out beautiful. We didn't have to really do anything special either with the quilt cotton. Just some woven interfacing and bada bing, bada boom. Look at that panel. Oh, I love it. I do really, really want to make another one though, where I do the quilting and I also make it a sling. So here's the back here. Nice little slip pocket. In this version here, we did use a more lightweight vinyl than this first version. This is a thicker, denser vinyl. This is a much lighter weight vinyl to go with the lightweight quilt cotton, but you can see still great structure. That's where that binding comes in. That's where the bone-like structure I told you about comes in. And it just, oh, I love this bag so, so much. Oh, I love it so much. So if you make this bag, if you've already made this bag, let me know. I mean, this has been around for a while. The reason I picked this pattern is because I've been seeing so many people post it on social media, and I'm just like, that shape is speaking to me right now. So if you've already made the bag, let me know. If you're going to make the bag, let me know. Let me know what material you're using. If you're doing the quilting, if you have your own quilting, there's so much. So much. Definitely let me know if you grab some of that pre-quilted vinyl and try it with this pattern, because I think I've got some more quilted vinyl coming in that I do want to make another one of these bags with. I'm very excited about that. So thank you so much for sewing with me today. I hope you had a good time. Thank you again to Rosa Patterns for allowing me to use your beautiful, beautiful patterns in my tutorials. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.